Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special meeting of the City Council of the City of Pearsall to be held today, Mondays, April 6, 2020. The time is 6:02. May I have a roll call, please?
Mary Moore,
Present.
Juliana Hernandez,
Here.
Richard Ganda,
Here.
Sonia Hernandez,
Here.
Brenda Trevino,
Here.
Abel Nieto,
Here.
Roland Segovia,
Here.
Davina Rodriguez.
Here. We have a quorum, so let us stand for our invocation. Pastor.
Heavenly Father, Lord God, we just thank you for another day of life. God, we thank you for this meeting, Father. We ask that you would guide us, Lord, as we are putting forth, Lord, the best plans forward for our city, our community, and the citizens in whom we represent. Lord, we ask that you would guide our thoughts, Lord, let us move, Father, for the betterment of our fellow men, Father. We thank you, God, for the wisdom that you're going to impart in our minds and our hearts, Father. We thank you, we give you all the honor and all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, presentation, discuss budget to actual revenue and expenditure projection.
Madam Mayor, council members, you have before you budget to actual schedule that created as a basis to assess our financial position as of March 30th or 31st, 2020. I'm not where I want to be reporting wise, but I was able to compile this. Doesn't mean we're not accounting for it, but I was able to compile this schedule, give you some type of basis, some type of financial basis to make some important decisions. Now, okay. If you go to your second page of the schedule, I believe it's revenue expenditures projection general fund. And I have a schedule for you, and bear with me if this is redundant and common knowledge, but I wanted to go over the structure of our budget and the structure of our expenditures. If you look at with me on your first column, you have a column that's named budget. And as you can see, the general fund budget is comprised of total taxes, total franchise fees, and other revenues for a total revenues of $6.80 million. That's the foundation of our budget. If you look at percentages right next to that column, you can see that ad valorem taxes current are $1.5 million. That's 31% of our budget. And city sales tax of 46%, which comprise 90% of our total budget. Now, within a governmental entity, for the general fund, the whole basis of our budget are these revenues that we collect. Cities and municipalities don't produce. So the whole basis for the budget is tax assessments and the collection of taxes, and that will base the whole foundation of our expenditure budget. So I wanted to highlight that, because it's important going forward that there's an understanding of the economic sensitivity of some of these items, like sales tax, and I'll make that clear as we go forward to our projections. Once we have established the revenue, we establish our expenditures, and if you go to the bottom of the page, you have a breakdown of those expenditures. 56% of those are personnel. So for our general fund, most of it is administrative for employees that provide those services, like the PD, like streets, things of that nature. And a majority of the expenditures fall into that line. Now let's talk about some actual numbers. March 2020 year-to-date actual, you have, as I mentioned before, we were trending very well. If you look at our total taxes collected of 2.2 million, that's 51% at the 6-month mark. That's that's what we can expect. I want to highlight our city sales tax. If you look at that, 775,941. Even though that's as of March 2020, it's 2 months behind. So this is January's number, January 2020. So this will play a huge part in my projection going forward, simply because of the economic factors and the unknowns that we have at this point. But as of January, we're trending very well. 33% of our budget has been collected, and we're on the road to meeting what we expected back when the budget was approved in September. So if you have your total revenues of 3.5 million, they're towards the middle or the bottom quarter of the page, 3.575, 149, what's been collected year to date. And corresponding to that is our expenditures of 3,193,608, which is 52% of our budget. So as of March 2020, we're doing very well. We're trending very well. But it's important to understand the situation that we are in right now. Some of those economic factors. I'm really not in the habit of projecting revenues at all, but I thought it was important to see where we could land if any of these revenues fluctuate and continue to spend based on our expenditure budget. So if you look towards the right-hand part of our schedule, we have projected actuals under 2020. And I took the position that our sales tax would be the most fundamental aspect of our budget that would be affected by the economic conditions that we're currently serving. So I went ahead and anticipated that we may see a fluctuation, that we may see a 20% fluctuation, which is a little low based on what I've read. The state is indicating that it could be a 10 to 40% reduction in sales tax revenue, which is huge for us simply because that's 46% of our budget. So if we were to see that, if this pandemic does extend past a few months and it goes through the whole year, which is possible, we may see a 20% reduction. And I've indicated that that would create a deficit. You go down to our total revenues, all the way down to the right, it's in red. I'm projecting that we may see a $680,225 reduction in our revenues based on a 20% reduction in our sales tax.
600, how much?
680,225. Towards the quarter page down to the right, in red, it's projected under collection. Now, it's significant because, as we mentioned, our expenditures are based on those revenues. So if we don't collect and continue to spend based on our projected or our original budget, well then we'll enter into an area that governments tend to do is we'll deficit spend. But in our case, we don't have the reserves to deficit spend or cover this type of shortfall. So
There's no city reserves right now?
Because I know when we were here 6 years ago, we left over $1 million in reserves.
there's $1 million, but that's about a month of operations. Okay, and if we have more of a reduction in sales tax, and there's other factors that can play into that, well then, we start getting into that $1 million. And that's all we have right now. But usually, it's recommended that an entity, a government has 6 months of reserves. We
Have
have,
they used the reserves in the last 5 years?
no. I believe that you've hit the budget pretty much, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
So, any reduction in our reserves has been probably due to budget issues or rate issues, tax, tax rate issues possibly that aren't providing enough revenue based on the expenditures. So that's just a guess, but no, you haven't. I don't believe that you've had that explained in the past. That's a general fund projection. You can go on to utility fund unless anyone has any questions. Okay.
Yes, Rhoda.
So with all due respect, I'm not gonna go toe to toe with my high school diploma against your degree. I'm not,
Okay.
because you'll probably beat me 2-1. But I will say this, I don't think that your projections are right. Let me tell you why. I've been looking at these numbers that you projected, and you just said it right now, that you're not into the field of projecting numbers.
Sure.
And I agree, because let me tell you an assumption that I came up with. Yes, I'm going through a difficult time right now in economic development, economically. But the deal is this, is that the people are still shopping, okay? I've talked to Walmart and I've talked to HEB on a personal base management skills, okay? And they have said that they have met and surpassed their sales at least 3 to 4 times of what they average daily. Okay. With that said and done, I don't think that everything that has been shut down, all these little mom and pop stores, okay, are going to equal to the amount of sales tax that HEB and Walmart are collecting. Let me give you another example. Sonic. Sonic hasn't been affected at all. Sonic does all the drive-thru. The drive-thru haven't been affected. Okay. There's a lot of issues that I have with this proposal that you gave us to say that we're going to run short. Now, with that said and done, like I said, we can always disagree. What is your recommendation to the city manager on trying to meet the budget, in the sense that if you feel that we're going to have a possible shortfall on not laying off people, but say for example cutting back hours, putting the squeeze on the city utilities, employees.
My recommendation, we haven't discussed any options, but like I mentioned, total personnel comprises 56% of our budget. So if there's any place that can be cut, would be capital outlay and personnel for the general fund. That's the only option. Just for your information, if we do furlough or layoff, we do have to consider the employees' health insurance, which is also a hefty expense. That's a decision above my pay grade, but those are I can give you the facts where we can cut, and that would be an area that would be significant and that would allow us, all factors remaining the same. If it's more or less, well then we can adjust. But right now, there's so many unknowns, and since our sales tax are 2 months behind, we won't really see the impact until June. This projection is only an interpretation. If you get 5 other economists, 5 other CPAs in here, everybody might have a different take. They might say, well, you should have gone 40%, or you should have gone 5%. Either way, any fluctuation within our budget causes a shortfall, because our expenditures are based on our actual budget. So that's something that needs to be considered, discussed. Certainly with parameters, we can provide options for the council to moving forward. And once we have the facts and actuals, well then we can say these are definitely going to be the shortfalls based on what we're seeing.
So I had mine was a comment, and now that we're on this other subject, a concern. As a business person, I see these businesses, they're booming right now, and it's kind of crazy because of the situation we're in. And the housing industry, getting notices back, who's affected by COVID-19, got none out of 120 homes.
Sure.
Golden Chicks lines is backing up. People are shopping, people are still eating out. These restaurants with the waitressing, they're probably the ones that took a little bit of the hit. But I think for all the sales tax for this probably gonna be the same or more because they're selling more product. When we're looking at the personnel part, we really don't wanna touch that because then that's when we're gonna affect the economy. But looking into the stuff that we approved in the past, we looked at approving a $17,000 parking lot when it wasn't needed at one time, that can go on hold. The building across the street can go on hold because we're out of budget already.
We aren't on our budget yet.
Well,
I'm just
Yes, no,
indicating.
but I'm saying when it comes to $50,000 furniture, it's gonna go over the budget. With the $17,000 parking lot, the $15,000 furniture, I think that stuff can be placed on hold because we're gonna go over budget. Have we gone over budget now? No. But will we? Yes. So that is $67,000 that we can save by putting this building on hold. So if we look, we can look, I think our sales tax is gonna be fine. There's mom and pops that are making more money than they've ever made before. People are buying, they're buying, they're eating out, it's clear. So if we're gonna look at something, I think we gotta look at stuff that is gonna throw us over budget. And we can see those numbers throwing us over because there's only so much money that we have there. If we save that money, that's gonna help.
So Santos, how much you anticipating the next building, next door, going over budget? Because right now that was.
Well, we have what was approved by.
The insurance company,
Yeah, the
right?
insurance.
Which
We
money's
have-
already
we have
allocated.
received that.
Right.
And there are some change orders that need to be accounted for.
Mhm.
But I don't anticipate it going over budget.
Thank you.
Simply because TML also has indicated that once we expend that money, we would get reimbursed over that. So that's something that's another line item. It can be separate from our sales tax. Now, just for your information, I understand your comments and all the analytics into our sales tax and things of that nature, but you know, the components of who pays our sales tax is important. And it's not the mom and pop shops, it's not even Walmart and H-E-B. You got Cameron International Corporation that comes in and pays up most of our sales tax. And you got Coastal Chemical.
I will say on that, we don't want to disclose that, that is confidential
Yes.
information. So we're not gonna
Well,
disclose that.
no, I'm just saying, that's just something that, again,
You're right.
that's just something that, those are components that provides the basis for our sales tax. So there are other economic dynamics that play outside of our perception. So just so you understand. Any questions? Any other questions?
Thank you. Are you finished?
Well,
No?
there's a utility,
Oh, keep going.
the utility budget to action. It's a little bit more straightforward. For a utility fund, you produce and you assess rates and you bill the customers. It runs like a business. If you look at our budget, 41% of it is water sales, and the other 31% comes as our garbage sales, which is almost a pass-through to the contract that we have with the public. We have our expenditures, again, 1.2 million of that is 26% of our expenditure budget. If you go to the actuals, you can see how we're trending. We've produced and assessed and collected $2.5 million in revenue, which is 52% of our budget, which at 6 months is great. That's half. But as you can see in our total expenditures, we're trending a little higher, but that's not unexpected. Sometimes there's maintenance and things of that nature that come into play, not for the projection. This is something a little different. As I had to think of it right, logically, as more people stay at home, they naturally would use more water. And as more people stay home, they lose their jobs and unemployment goes up, well then, we could see a rise in our delinquencies. So even though we're producing more water, we may see a drop in revenue. I anticipate that it's possible that we can see a 10% drop if this pandemic extends for 6 months, which is logical. As people exhaust their unemployment and things of that nature, there could be a tendency not to pay your water or not to pay your sewage or or your trash, things of that nature. And as we produce more, our expenditures will be more. So I anticipate if we see a 10% reduction in our collection rate, that we would have a $438,000 deficit. Again, I'm supposing, I have no facts, but it's great to get this on paper. At least we understand that when the actuals do come in, it's not a surprise if they do go down, if citizens are having trouble paying their bills. And we're having to produce more and expend more to provide those basic services of water, wastewater, and trash pickup. Do you have any questions on that, Mr. Lee?
I have a question on the garbage sales.
Yes.
What are you trying to mean, what are you trying to say when it says $104,000?
In that instance, we've collected more than our budget. Yes. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Alrighty, 5A, discuss and consider streets to be paved and/or directing the city manager to advertise for bids. This is an action item. Entertain a motion to discuss, please.
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I don't know, Mayor, y'all want to speak to that?
Okay, over the weekend, when we had the heavy rain Friday and Saturday, we had already decided before the rain came in, we've been getting a lot of calls, and I know that we're in a crisis right now, and we're going through everything with COVID-19, but we can't stop doing city business. That's the purpose of having city business go into, that's why we're staying open, so we can continue city business. On the weekend, I had the one part that we were checking out on Roland, what's that road back there? Roosevelt and Chaparral. I got a video sent to me, and this lady's house was flooded. Patty Herbs, I guess, they're the ones that did the ditch, and we were supposed to go out there and look at putting the retention pond, looking for, going forward with that. When I first got here, that's when we brought it up. The videos that were sent were quite disturbing with what they had. They literally needed a boat to get to their trailer, and their house was underwater with a couple of inches. We really have to get on this. I know we were waiting for the county to,
Are we ready for the county?
yes, we're waiting for the county on that. But we've been waiting on the county for many years when it goes to that street, many years. When I was in office 10 years ago, we were waiting for the county. Correct me if I'm wrong, Abel.
No.
And I think it's time that we take action, especially for this street here. And I wanted just to show y'all the little bit of video of this street so y'all can see what I saw. And it's disturbing. We're taking advantage, for granted where we live. This is that water overflowing, and these people text me that weekend. And my answer to those people were, I don't know. What didn't you say that y'all were gonna work on it? Yes, I did say that. And that's when it comes to the point what I made at the last meeting when we brought it up. We cannot wait for the county. County has their own streets. The county's not, I'm not saying the county doesn't care about us, but they have their own streets that they're fixing. If we say we're gonna wait for the county, it's never gonna get done. Let's just tell these people it's not gonna get done, instead of telling them, let's wait for the county.
I think it was a financial reason why we chose the county, because do we have money allocated to get this done?
We have the $374,000 of street dollars that were in the budget that's been allocated for street work. Now, with that, if you look at your packet, I think looking back at page 1 there on the discussion was, we discussed all of the streets that needed to be paved. And there was a discussion, I think, on March the 10th, where we were gonna work with LNV to try to give us some specifications, to do that. So I was gonna issue an RFQ based on the direction of the council to go with another engineering firm, to move forward with some of these street repairs. If I recall correctly, I don't recall that street, I know it needs work, believe me, I've been out there with several council members, or at least a couple of council members. I know it needs work, but that wasn't one of the streets that was in the study, and the study's in your packet. So we could, again, on that end, I don't have any estimates of what the cost would be, but we could add that to whatever the council was.
What I would like to do is remove the streets that I put on there, remove them. I think what we have to do, we gotta go by an urgency basis. And that video is very disturbing.
Which street did you put on there?
I don't know.
There was a list, if you look at the,
I think it was Willow.
Northeast, hers is northeast.
Northeast.
It's all William, Margot, Hackberry, that's her streets.
I think,
One second,
ahead of time. Yes,
Oh, no, I think, it's, I would give up some of my streets as well, the streets that I had wrote down, because, I mean, we did tell these people the last time we were here about, you know, that getting fixed, and it's just, you know, I did get calls as well, and I did get, you know, told about it, and it is, you know, we don't have answers, because, you know, like Davina was saying, you know, waiting on the county, we can't do that, you know, and if there's anything we can do to, you know,
redirect the monies
yeah.
as per the council.
you
That's-
could redirect it to drainage, 'cause that's what it sounds like we're talking, is
Yes,
the
but-
drainage / street problem as.
If you don't take care of the, what's that pond?
The retention.
The retention pond, you're just going to have that.
It's gonna be,
drain back on the new, and it's still gonna be the same problem, so that's why we gotta figure out how to take care of that problem.
Okay, we don't wanna do $100,000 Band-Aid. We wanna go ahead and fix it. What I was saying, I think we already approved an RFQ for another engineering company, and also allowing LMV to put their bid in as well, if they would like, but I think we need to go with another one, because LMV has also been with this problem with this street for many years. And their answer to us is gonna be, we need the county. We're not gonna wait on the county. The county has a lot of things on their plate right now. They're fixing streets themselves. If we can fix that and take away from some other streets for now, I think we have to focus on that street.
What I recommend to the council is, and I'll have it for you, I will have it at the next meeting, the RFQ, the RFQ will issue the RFQ, okay? We will work on a design for that. I do need to, as part of that, there's two things we need to work on, either the securing ownership of property, because again, there's so much we can do on our right of way. We need to create room for the detention pond or retention pond. Or and I haven't done this, there's an easement that runs along, I believe there's telephone poles, or excuse me, power lines that run along that area that we could, and I haven't investigated to see if we could use that as a possible way of water to flow. I know that LMV, Mr. Vieta and I went out there, and that was one of the things he did mention, but there was no, quite frankly, we didn't go any further than just discussing what the issue is.
Okay. Councilman?
I'd like to just make a comment that, you know, most cities around us are putting things on hold, and I'm not suggesting we put anything on hold right now, I'm just putting this out there. And the reason being is that, you know, they need to have the money available. They've decided to have the money available in case they have to amend the budget because of issues that may come up with this pandemic. You know, we heard Mr. Alarcon say about we may have residents in this community, a lot of the residents who may be forced to not pay city bills because they have to feed their kids or pay their rent or whatever. Our number one job is to provide the basic utility services, okay? And if we can find a way to maybe figure out how to get started on
this particular street and then be able to hold on to some of that, delay some of the other things in the meantime, because everybody's doing it. The city of San Antonio's delayed $82 million on roads, on economical projects, even the project for the homeless and such. Everybody's just a little jittery right now to spend money, okay? And so the idea being is we don't know where this is headed. We just don't know. And I know that it's you know, one of those situations where we can possibly look at, you know, suggestions like Councilwoman Rodriguez has said, you know, maybe put a hold on this annex building for now and those kinds of things, you know. I think we have to leave it up to our city manager and our finance director to come up with some financial, maybe some financial advisement as to what we can do in this particular case, because we've got to have that money just in case.
I think that the challenge is, and just to make sure, again, to reiterate, that building over there is not being paid with sales tax / property taxes. So I want to make sure, now we go over whatever money TML gives us, that's where I'm saying we're not gonna do that. I'm saying that we don't have the money, we're not gonna go and dip into sales tax and property tax to try to pay anything that we have to get for that building or anything else.
That's why we should keep that building on hold, because more than likely, from what I've been told from a lot of people, is that we're gonna go over budget.
And you may, I'm not, again, I'm just saying on that, and I would definitely not recommend that we spend anything more than what's allocated for that project. Whether it's, now, and saying the other thing, it is a tough issue, because again, I know this is not the first time I've heard this issue about this road. I personally would think that you would want to fix your drainage issue, and I think y'all made that clear. So we could work with somebody to work on the design. Once you get the construction cost, which is going to cost you the money, then you can decide if you want to spend the money to move forward with fixing that issue, which is again having the appropriate drainage and then fixing the street.
Yes, Councilman Zerbe.
Mayor, I hear exactly what Councilwoman Rodriguez is saying, and Mr. Hernandez. The only thing I gotta say to that is that the reason that some of these streets, this street, was not added to our list when we were working on the list was because we had, when we first got elected, back in May and June, that there was one of the priorities that we put on with 3 signatures to make sure that this thing got taken care of. The past administration did some patchwork, you know, there in that area, but it was nothing to where it was supposed to be, okay? And I know that we have brought it up to the city manager, the administration, to actually work on this drainage. And up till now, nothing's been still done, okay? And that's the reason that this item was never brought up on these streets. With that said and done there, I understand once again what Councilman Hernandez is saying, but if Councilman Hernandez Sonia wants to do away with some of her streets on the northwest, southwest, and Councilman Rodriguez wants to do with northwest, I want to still see a couple of streets still be done. Like, take for example, you know, I mean, I've always said about Medina Street. Medina Street, that's a very big, well-traveled road, and that one is bad. The other ones are, take for example, I can tell you that on Pecan Street, Mayor, going down to 1582, all the way down to Grove Street. Those 2 streets in 2013, Pecan Street was, Grove Street was paved. Okay, I remember that one, with that bond money of $8 million. It's on the record. And then on 2013, the other bond money, okay, was 2016, Pecan was paved. Okay, the only streets that have not been paved or touched in that area have been Carter, Ash, and Walnut. And that's where Angie lives, Angie Garcia. That street, I don't know if you've been through there, it's a pretty bad street. And then right next door, that's where all the Davises live. That one is a pretty bad street. Okay, so those 3 streets have not been touched at all. And I understand what they're saying, and I think I did the math according to some of the bids. And I talked to Robert today, and I said, these are not bids that, you know, they're gonna come by, well, no, these are just estimates. You know, and we were to put it out, it can always come under these. So I'm gonna recommend to the council, if, I don't know if y'all are finished talking about it, but what I wanna see is, I wanna see those 3 streets, 479, you know, being paved, plus Roosevelt and Haynes. And I think Roosevelt and Haynes, according to the retention, pond that we need out there, the drainage that Mr. Reyes is talking about, I think that one, I'm not in there, but I think that one's gonna run at least $150,000 to $200,000. And on that one, this one over here with the 3 streets, Carter Edition, it's gonna run 125. So we're gonna still
So
be
3 streets together, gonna total 125?
125. Yes, ma'am.
How much?
125, that's estimated. That's not the actual bid. Because remember, also Mayor, whenever we put these out, we can always reject the bids. We don't have to go with those bids. Okay? So, that's gonna be my recommendation. If nobody wants to do the other streets, I really would strongly, support doing 479, which is, Carter Street hasn't been touched in years. Okay, and then Walnut and Ash. And then, of course, Councilman Rodriguez, Haynes and Roosevelt.
Okay, on those streets, I agree with Councilman Segovia, and I really want to be in there that we go for RFQs. I don't want to stick with one engineer, because this is where we'll save money, because they have given us quotes like that before, and they've gone with it. They've never gone under it. So, and right now that people are looking for work, we're probably gonna get under budgeted, and it's gonna be good right now. And I think this is a time that we have to take that money is already budgeted for. We're not grabbing that money from somewhere else. That money is already in the budget. And these people's houses, when I got that call Saturday, I was heartbroken. I had no words to tell them at all, other than, I know I said something and I didn't come through, but I told them it's on the agenda for Monday. We haven't forgotten about y'all. So it's on there Monday. We didn't know the rain was coming, but we know that we had to get it done. So I would go with Councilman Segovia.
Yes, Councilman.
Well, we've discussed this street in the last few years, but you know, we haven't quite gotten the county and everybody to get together on it, and our funds weren't out there, actually. But one of the things that I was gonna ask is, what type of work are we looking at? Because it just depends on what type of do we have any infrastructure underneath these streets that we're talking about that may need some improvements, and is that going to cost money? Because one of the things that I think was what we did the last 4 or 5 years was try to get the pipes and everything, the sewer, the water lines, and the gas lines fixed underneath some of these streets, so we wouldn't have to go back and tear them up. So I don't know if there's any kind of infrastructure issues there. I don't know if L&D ever gave us a map of any of this stuff in terms of.
I'm sure we have a map off the top of my head. I don't recall if there's infrastructure in that area. I'm sure there's water. So where it runs, I don't know. I have to look at a map. But to answer the question, look, this is just, there's no utilities, there's nothing in this for projected budget.
So we're just gonna put a top on?
It's I have to look at what their recommendation was.
479.
Yeah, I believe it's a 2-course seal. So it's 2-course, I'm calling it a chip seal. It's a chip seal 2-course. I have to look at every one of these to see what their description was, how to repair it. Because what they did is, I'd have to go back to their assessment, and they gave a category to these streets, and they said, this is what we need to do to these streets to make it. Some of them you have to rebuild. Some of them you have to just lay a 2-course seal. Some of them you're just laying an overlay on. And this one, I honestly, I don't recall off the top of my head what the recommendations were for 4, 7, and 9, as far as the type of treatment that you would apply to the streets.
So we anticipate being additional funding if we have to do the infrastructure first.
If you were going to take care of infrastructure, definitely would be more than this. This is not included. I would agree also with Councilman Segovia that the cost of the drainage is gonna be significant. It's not gonna be,
That's the only way you're gonna get,
yeah, it's not gonna be,
Roosevelt,
yeah.
to prevent the water from running back on the new road. Yes, Councilman Douglas.
Yes, I think we need to get, or hold people accountable, because before this rains, we were waiting for the county for the equipment, That's the only reason that we were waiting for the equipment. Apparently the money was already there. We need to take initiative and take care of Roosevelt and Chaparral, because, we can't wait for more rain to come in. They're gonna be back to the same thing. So I think that we need to hold people accountable and, take care of the problem.
When it comes to fixing these streets, I know a lot of these streets that were fixed a few years ago, infrastructure wasn't done. It was just, they fixed the streets. I know I'm not talking for the people on the one that, I lost is it Roosevelt? No. Chaparral. Is that I think they would be satisfied with a retention pond before they get the street. So I know if I tell them retention pond, we're gonna try to fix the flooding out there, but your street's gonna have to wait. But we're gonna fix the plumbing first, the flooding first, and that's what we're gonna have to do, is fix the flooding, and I know they would be happy with that, because it's too much water out there. And I know we're in a crisis, but if it was our house underwater, I don't care what's going on, I pay taxes, I want my street fixed.
And
So-
then, do we have property to put this retention pond on that is not private property?
You're gonna have to, again, I'm not an engineer, I wouldn't tell you, but you are gonna need some space somewhere. It can't be on the road to actually have the water run to wherever you need it to run to, so
I
again,
think
what.
that could be part of the negotiation, like right now, we gotta run with RFQs, we gotta get an engineer to tell us what it needs. What are we looking at, how big is this retention pond, what we're looking at, and then we'll go from there. If we have property there, and I think we do have property there, to see if our property is big enough, and if it's not, then we gotta look to see who owns it, that we can say, hey, and also look at the easement. How much easement is ours? And if we need more, then that's when we go into negotiation with people that own the property, and I'm sure they would wanna get it fixed. I mean, that was a lot of water this weekend.
Yes, Councilman.
Mayor, once again, I hate to beat this, the horse, what's that saying?
Dead horse.
Dead horse. But I'll say it again. I hate to bring Bobby into this. Even Bobby knows about the project on Roosevelt, Chaparral. And because we rode out there one day when this item was first coming up back in June, July. And the way it's structured there is that it's only, when we talk about Chaparral and Roosevelt, don't think you talk about miles and miles. Okay, you're actually talking about, I'm not an engineer, but you're talking about less than a mile. Less, maybe half a mile. And it's just, I'm gonna say, I haven't taken out a ruler, I'm gonna say it's like maybe 500 feet from east to west, west to east, okay? And 500 feet from north to south. That's all it is. And it's just right there where it holds the water, okay? And people have blamed certain landowners around there. And I tend to disagree with that, because take for example on Chaparral Road, Mayor, it goes up. It goes up, like towards the Reyes, towards San Jalo Road, it goes up. See, so the water comes down to that intersection there, okay? So I'm not blaming so much the landowners. I'm not blaming so much the landowners. I'm blaming more the engineering that was done in that area, okay? And then to answer one of the questions that we haven't, I think you asked the question, we have any property. I know that at one time, Mayor, there's a family, Medrano, that lives right there in the corner. They're the ones that get very affected by this. And I know he's got some land right next to it. And I know he's showed some desire to work with the city on trying to get what Councilwoman Rodriguez saying, a detention pond there. So there's options there. There's options, so it's not like we're into a dead end, there's options there. But we just need to take action, and when we take action, we have to go forward with it. We cannot put it back in the back burner and just sit there again, like we did the past 6 months.
All righty, I'm gonna call for the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Sorry, I didn't see you.
Before we make a motion, I understand, and I would agree with everyone that is making a case for that area, whether that street. Right? But I would like for us to maybe be a little cautious with what we have, and maybe take with the amount of money we have, the funds we have, and maybe take that street there as an initial project, and look at how that's going to play out for us. And this will give us maybe a little time to figure out how the pandemic and all other issues are going to play out for us. If we can take care of the issues there, the drainage issues and those kinds of things there, maybe we'll, as time goes on, we will survive the pandemic and maybe it will not hit us so hard economically, so that we can maybe continue on other streets as well. That's what I would think that would be wise for us to do if we could.
To do one at a time, and just to see how it, we
Just-
should always come back and bid on the rest. It's not like we, have to do it all tonight, so.
I would like to make a motion there. And if you actually look at the package that the city clerk did for us, all the streets are there, and it's like, oh my God, like a $3.6 million project. So I think going with Councilman Hernandez, what he's saying, I agree to a certain extent, but I would still recommend, I would still make a motion that 479 on the southeast side, 479, plus the Chaparral and Roosevelt corner lots, okay, be paid or find a solution for a retention pond with one of the landowners, and work on a retention pond for that area. So that's my motion there, to do 479 on Carter Edition and Chaparral and Roosevelt with a possible retention pond, and speaking to landowners for the project to be completed.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. May I have a second?
Second.
Oh, you second? Okay, I didn't hear you. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to discuss and consider freezing or suspending the collection of hotel occupancy taxes and/or directing the city manager to draft an ordinance to the effect. All righty, entertain a motion to discuss, please.
To discuss.
Second. All in favor? Yes, sir.
Excuse me. This is another item on the agenda, I believe. So I don't know if you have to do it as far as what the plan is, whoever, the items, I know that there's some
You
some
need someone
discussion.
to rationale, and discuss this, whoever put it on the agenda.
What else? Mr. Neal,
Okay,
do you want to tell us?
why are we putting this on the agenda?
I believe that the motels right now, they're hurting, for occupancy. So I believe we give them a break, for, I believe, for 6 months.
6 months?
It'll help them on their taxes, insurance and taxes.
Okay, 1 second, let me ask Bobby. Is it legal that they don't have to pay taxes? Is it legal for us to do that? We have to make sure it's not a legal thing before.
Well, you've got an ordinance that adopted the provisions of Chapter 351 of the tax code that allowed you to do so. Strangely enough, that chapter doesn't really address a governmental body suspending it or freezing it or even eliminating it. Now, you certainly can, but as opposed to suspending it or freezing it, you would have to eliminate it potentially and then bring it back. Now, I'd still like to look into this because, you know, you're under contract, but that should not be affected in terms of, I think, is it Muni Services? Muni Services?
Yes.
But the tax is paid by not the hotels or motels, but of course, as you know, the tax is paid by the people that are staying there. Just like sales taxes, so the innkeeper collects the tax that the person staying there, the visitor pays, and then remits it to the state, and we get our percentage. But what we'd be looking at more, if you direct us to bring an ordinance, is to eliminate it or rescind the motion so that you're not collecting it at all if you don't want to collect it for the time being. And then, of course, you'd have to amend your budget consistent with any, anybody that is either getting paid or any projects that you've got that are being funded on this. So I think, and I'm not sure at this point, I'd want to look at it a little bit more, but we have a meeting at least, a couple of weeks from now, which would be, if the answer is to completely do away with it and then potentially bring it back, I just want to find out how things are affected in the meantime, and not from a financial perspective, but just from a legal perspective. I'd like to look into that. So it would have to be completely done away with and then brought back, but I want to see what the ramifications of doing so are.
I'd like to say that I have been driving out at night to different hotels, motels, and they seem to be about as busy as they have been. And it's really people who drive by and are on their way somewhere else and stay there. It's not our local citizens that are being affected. The only thing the only way we're being affected is that we get to collect. And that is another source of revenue that we have relied on for quite a few things that we need to rely on. So I'd like for us to really consider holding on to the sales hotel tax if we can, because I don't think it affects us really it's everything to gain.
Yeah, exactly. So the hotel motel tax, that tax, it goes into the hot funds, correct?
Yes.
And that fund, the hot funds right now, how much money does it have in it as of right now? 400,000 or 464? Okay. So, Councilman Segovia had brought that up to me, talking about giving back to these hotels. He drove me to two of them that had nobody there, which was one of our local residents up here saw, Mr. Bogdan. That one's right in front of Valero. His kids went to school with me. They're from, his kids were raised in Pearsall. And as well as the Royal Inn, all their kids went to school here in Pearsall. They're residents of Pearsall. They vote in Pearsall. I know if we were to stop the hotel motel tax, if they're getting 5 to 6 people a week or a month, it's gonna help them like give back, because that money, we're not relying on that money to pay bills. Do we pay bills with our hotel motel tax?
Do they pay bills? Not really.
No, okay. So I was just looking at it when I talked to these residents of Pearsall, how they're being affected by it. We take into consideration the oil field is dropped right now. Our gas is $1.60. When you're paying cheap gas, that means oil field families are hurting. I was an oil field family for 15 years. So I'm thinking with this, we've used their money on things that haven't put heads in beds a few times. And if we stop it for a couple of months to help them out, because they are the ones that fund our festivals, our local events that we have here. And sometimes they're not as successful. And this here is just to give back. That's just my opinion. It wasn't my idea, it was Councilman Segovia's, and I thought about it, and that's what I came to the conclusion with.
So Bobby, you have to find out the rules if we can do this, that's what I'm saying. Should
If
we
the-
table it to find out if this legal what we're doing? Do we need to table it? I know it's hard to hear under this.
If you'd
So you
want,
can find out more information on,
if the council would want to direct the city manager and myself simply to find out whether a simple, taking away, just adopting an ordinance basically
For
rescinding.
temporary.
Well, we can say it's temporary. The effect would be that we would eliminate it altogether, but it could certainly say temporary. I just want to make sure that we know, since it's rarely done, I'm not aware that anybody's ever done it, that we just draft an ordinance consistent with, if you want it temporarily done away with, that we just look into it, make sure we do it correctly, and then bring you an ordinance and the answers to your questions at the next meeting. So I'll tell you right off the bat, I'll be consulting with Beauty Services, consulting with the Texas Hotel Lodging Association, and I'll certainly, again, really look at Chapter 351, answer all the questions, come back with you with an ordinance consistent with what you tell us to do. And if you tell me 3 months, 6 months, of course, anything you tell me tonight certainly would help in drafting the ordinance, if that's what your intent is.
yes, Councilman.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and table this item and give a directive to the city attorney to look at a possible rescinding of the ordinance of the hotel motel occupancy tax in the city of Pearsall.
Second.
And put it back on the agenda, next council meeting.
Okay, there's a motion. All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Discuss and consider rescinding or eliminating the monthly utility 650 surcharge and or directing the city manager to draft an ordinance to that effect. Motion. All in favor? Now, let me get a second, sorry. We got a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
And this was brought up by myself and Roland Segovia, Councilman Segovia, because we had already talked about it a few months ago, about removing that charge, and when we had one of our, I don't know if it was the auditor or somebody that told us that charge was really not anything that the city would benefit from.
Just no.
Yeah, just that the city's not benefiting from the $650 surcharge a month. They're really not benefiting from it, and if you take it away, you're not hurting from it. And this was already approved about 5 months ago, and we were just bringing this back up to close out this part out and say, okay, it's time to remove it because we've already been advised it's never helped the city, and that's what they told us in the meeting, that it wasn't helping, and it wouldn't hurt us if we took it away.
Okay, so the 650, it comes out to 230,000 that's allocated to the bond payment, am I correct?
It's allocated, ma'am, it's allocated to the budget, the operating budget, and to pay off the debt. The debt
Right.
service, it's all built into the budget. It's all built into the budget. We've analyzed this some, and I know Mr. Snowden, part of our discussion, I think we hired him back late January. Part of our discussion was to expedite and move forward with the removal of the or not the removal, but actually doing away with the surcharge, and coming up with some sort of a fee schedule that was consistent to what the council was requesting. I anticipate that if we go that route, we should have a fee schedule, a new fee schedule to the council in May. He was waiting for us on some items that he needed for us for him to formulate his model for the fees, but that is where we are with that. And just to remind the council, there wasn't a rate study that was done in the 2016 issuance. Okay, there was never. I think Mr. Segovia, when he was the mayor, did one when the 2012 issuance came out. there wasn't anything done. So that was the reason that we were trying to establish some sort of a fee schedule for this issuance.
Yes, Councilman Scully.
Mayor, to my amazement, I've always heard about this surcharge. Okay, but I've never taken the time to look at the ordinance. And it's so sad to say that we were all stuck at $6.50. But it's not $6.50. It's it's 10.10. That's exactly what they went up on the city of Citizens of Pearsall. They went up $6.50 surcharge, and then also they added $3.60 to the garbage. And right now, I guess the only item on the agenda is to do away with the $6.50, so they get away with the $3.60. We'll bring it back up for another day for discussion. But the surcharge, like I said, Mayor, Mr. Reyes is correct. When we did the rate study, it was supposed to be gradually done throughout the I think it was 10 years, 8 years, 5-year period. That's when we brought in Mr. Jeff Snowden. And then how and who decided to put this surcharge on top of that rate study that really put a damp on the citizens of Pearsall. Now, I understand about the concern that some of y'all might have on the money that we might be losing on this, but take into consideration also that the city of Pearsall went ahead and annexed almost 300-something acres into the city of Pearsall. And we just received, okay, I'm pretty sure I can talk about this because it's open records, that we just received $400-something thousand from sales tax from STEC, okay? So really, we're in a win situation, not a losing situation on this surcharge. That's all I got to say, man. Sorry.
I'll share it.
Okay.
I have a question for, I don't know if, I mean, I understand about the surcharge and so forth and how it places undue hardship on some of the residents, especially how it's applied, because some of the bigger corporations or bigger businesses are paying the same surcharge as somebody who can barely afford the surcharge. But I'd like for, if we could, I don't know if council can look at the contract, because what I read into this contract is that any amendments that we as a council make to the ordinance that we had approved would have to be, we'd have to make sure that the holder, which is the bank, basically understands what we're doing, and it's not going to be detrimental to anything. So I would hate to act on something unless we look into the contract and say, okay, we're okay with what we're doing, because pretty much throughout the contract, it does state that we're going to be paying for this, the bonds, through the levy of, and collection of that balloon tax, and also from, some of these fees that we're talking about.
I will say that we're scheduled to have Mr. Aguilera, I'm going to get with him at the next meeting, because I know the bond council can shed some light into this. I have spoken to the financial advisor and asked him some of these questions that we're talking about, because I knew eventually, whether it was today or sometime in the near future, it was going to come up again. But it is something that the council may want to hear from bond council to make sure that not only Bobby agree with me.
And then also, STEC money, when we did the budget, isn't already allocated within the budget?
It is.
So
It is.
so
STEC
how's it
money
gonna
is.
be a plus?
STEC money is property tax, and so, but
Right.
yes, to answer your question, it's in your operating budget. And, I mean, you have to make amendments to the budget well, I'll let Bobby speak to some of this. Go ahead.
As it relates to STEC, that was a payment in lieu of taxes agreement. So it is not sales taxes, but it's actually, it's payment in lieu of paying ad valorem taxes, goes into the general fund, which should not ideally affect the utility fund operations. They're supposed to be considered separate. As you know, general funds tax supported, ad valorem tax, sales tax supported primarily, and then the utility funds are separate, funded by revenues. To go back to Mr. Hernandez's question, And please, anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking at the date when the 2016 placement was made, when that debt was issued at almost $8.6 million. That ordinance was adopted in May of 2016. So whatever agreements and contracts and pledges that took place at that time, and it was a combination issuance, which means the agreement to pay it back was both tax-based, property tax-based, and revenue-based off of your utilities. But this surcharge ordinance was not adopted, again, unless I'm mistaken, until November of that year. So from a timing perspective, you asked the question about, is this surcharge ordinance a part of the covenant, the pledge, the promise with respect to the bonds? If the May and November dates are correct, then the council didn't adopt the surcharge until after the whole bond situation was taken care of. So it means that after all the bonds were issued and the promises were made, they later adopted the surcharge. The only relationship that I see off the bat is that, granted, the promises that were made in '86 in May included utility fund revenues. So since I keep saying '86, I don't know why. Since 2016, obviously, when you've budgeted, you've taken the surcharge into account. Part of the discussion earlier in the year, as it relates to the surcharge, was that most cities don't impose surcharges. When they do, they're temporary. The reason why you try to avoid them is because the only fair way to assess utility payments is based on the rate study. Because the rate study takes into account everything, maintenance, operations, and also debt service. But as Mr. Hernandez alluded, and the council knows, the current surcharge, it's regressive. Let's just say it's $10 for every utility account. That is the people who use the least amount of water and wastewater and garbage still have to pay the same amount as the people that use the most. That's why when you have a flat rate surcharge, it's usually, you try to avoid it because it's applied unequally. So what the auditors were talking about, what Jeff Snowden was talking about, and I know staff has talked about, is what we've got to do moving forward is have whatever you need in the utility, water, wastewater, garbage, and natural gas, that each of those charges have to reflect what your actual operations are, including debt service, and building up a reserve. And then that's the only way to apply it fairly. But I hope I answered your question about the surcharge ordinance as it relates to the 2016 debt issuance.
I just don't want language in that contract to come back at us later.
It should. The only relationship as it relates to this issue is the city pledged utility revenues.
But it's not the surcharge.
But not the surcharge revenue. Surcharge revenues have now become a part of utility revenues. So the only thing you have to do, as the city manager suggested, is, and the finance director, look at the impact, but then again, you have to look at how you're doing in other areas as well, as it offsets whatever the surcharge brings in.
Okay, so with this surcharge, I was looking into it a lot whenever Jeff had said that, we're not explaining what the surcharge is for. And I was like, okay, what does he mean by that? But if we look at Cameron and Stet, Geo, the hospital, all the water they're using, gas, the garbage they use, versus an 89-year-old lady that lives by herself. Okay, she's paying $6.50, and her water bill averages $40 a month. And immigration averages $10,000 a month. Just saying, I don't know how much it is. Where are we justifying this charge at? That's why I was in awe that a rate study hadn't been into effect. And when you do a contract that you're saying you're gonna pay out through your utility fund, it's based on a rate study. So when you put your rate study in, Miss 89-year-old lady, she's gonna pay according to her usage. and it's very minimum. If you go to GEO, the immigration facility, they're gonna pay a whole lot more, and we're not losing the $10 that we're gonna take away from them today, because it's gonna go by percentage. And it's not, we can't justify this charge to anybody. If an 89-year-old lady comes to me and a corporation comes to me, what is our answer to them, how we're justifying the rates? There's none, because we don't have a rate study in place. Once we can remove it now, once we put that rate study in place, we're not gonna be losing, because the rate study is gonna take care of itself.
Yes, Council.
Well, I was just gonna say, yes, you're right, we were in awe as to how it was gonna be applied. The thing that, the issue came up a couple of times, and we had asked to have the administration look at percentage of total usage on the services, because then that would make things equitable. We you know, for whatever reasons, it was not done at the time, but I think we're looking at doing all that now, and I'll turn it over to Fred.
Yes, Council.
Mayor, I have a question for, I don't think he can answer it. Maybe you or Julian can, since y'all were in the council in 2016 when this thing passed. But, Mr. Reyes, it says here the 360 for the garbage account. That's a surcharge that's charging all the citizens, right? How is that 360 being used? I mean, what?
It's used to pay right now what it's being used for is to pay, right now, some of the debt. When you look at the budget, some of it's used to pay the debt. Because they broke up, the way it breaks up, and you can see the budget, some of it's used to pay the debt service for this issuance, some of it's on water and sewer, and then you have the INS structure on your general fund side that help pay for the debt. But you are paying some of that issuance through the trash side.
So the citizens are paying for the debt that the city has,
For the utilities.
Yes.
but it's a debt that's already been there.
Yeah, it's, the way it was calculated, again, it was $3.60 charge that basically is paying for a portion of that debt service. So whatever that payment is, I'll make it as simple as I can. I'll talk to Council with you. We pay approximately about $2 million in debt a year, okay? Of that, we're saying this much is coming from your taxes, this much is coming from your water and sewer, this is coming from your trash. Now, I will say this, that back in 2016, there was some analysis that was done for this particular issuance. And with that, what they did at the time, the financial advisor did was gave a breakdown of, hey, you pay this way, this is how much you pay. You pay this way, this is how much you pay. And it's in here. And so again, what we need to do on our end is fix those pieces that were not done according to what was recommended by the financial advisor. And I would ask the council, if you want to do away with the rates tonight, in May, I will have something to you in May, with the rate structure. Again, I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be something you guys may or may not want to see, but it will be a rate structure that makes sense.
Yes, because that will take into consideration all the debt loss versus having your 89-year-old lady paying the equal amount to the corporation. And that's what a rate study is. Everything will fluctuate.
Yes, Council.
Did we get the GEO settled already with their meters and stuff?
We did put a new meter in there, and it's reading. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. So we're hoping that that issue it gets resolved, and we start billing the way we should with some of these. Again, and I'm not saying that the residential meters aren't important, but our position is, at least mine is make sure that the commercial meters are working the way they should. Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're going to entertain a motion at this point.
Mayor, I have a motion, but I have a question before the motion to legal counsel, Mayor. The question I have for Mr. Bobby is this, I see the item on the agenda because I'm the one that put this item on the agenda, the 650 surcharge. But then furthermore, on the item, Bob, it talks about to draft an ordinance to that effect. If I were to make a motion, Bob, that I want to do away recent ordinance, 2016, 1101. Will that be in compliance with this item that I put on the agenda? Because what I want to do is, I want to do away with also the 360. Okay, that whole ordinance. Okay, but like I said, I've always understood it was only the 650 surcharge, not the 650 plus the 360. So if I were to amend this ordinance, am I still in compliance with the request that I put?
My preference would be that you direct the city manager to bring back an ordinance. Tonight, all we can do is give staff direction, because we don't have an ordinance for you to consider.
Right.
So the only way to eliminate anything in an ordinance is through another ordinance. But if you direct us to draft an ordinance consistent with rescinding ordinance 1101 and its charges, we can certainly do that.
Mayor, oh, I'm sorry,
The last one.
sorry.
So taking this into account, if we do away with the surcharge tonight, how does that place us financially? What does that do to the financial status?
Also, look to that, and maybe something can help me out as well. If we do away with it for a month, which will be this coming month, April, and we don't do anything in May, it is definitely going to be a change. And what I mean by that is it's not going to be it's revenue that's being generated that we propose in the budget that's no longer there. So it is going to be significant.
You have a dollar amount?
Once again, dollar amount, if we did away for the rest of the year,
I don't think it does.
at least 100, that's on this, just that is all
Fiscal year? Sorry.
the whole thing.
Okay, for 6 months?
How fast does that
a
rate
little bit-
study goes into place?
A little more.
One second.
I talked to Jeff, and we think we can make it, I'd like to have it by May the 1st, but it'll be May, where we, but again, on that end, the council will have to act and make, whatever the amount, I won't say whatever the amount is, but it will be something that you guys would have to act on in May to make some of this balance.
Because if we remove it as of May 1st, the rate study would go in. And if we're not, because we're still putting burden on our elderly and our disabled, and right now they're in a crisis as well, so we're still gonna put burden on them. When we put that rate study into effect, there may be prices going up, they may go down, but it's depending on your usage.
Right.
And the only thing I would add to that, and Fred and I have talked about it, is that the only category of individuals that state law allows you to treat differently is seniors and disabled. So you can still, once you get some sort of census on how many accounts that will be affected, its impact fiscally, then you adjust the rate study consistent with a different rate based on consumption, because you want to discourage, just because they have a
We
low rate.
did that when the rate study happened in 2015, and as of then, always the elderly and disabled, they had a different rate.
So you
And it
can,
went away.
right, you can still design it so that they're impacted the
Yeah.
least and everybody else picks
Yeah,
up.
because the last 3 years it went away, so now we can put it back into place.
So,
Yeah, he was making a motion.
he's,
Okay.
he hasn't made it yet. And one more comment?
You got a comment?
Question. So, if we wait for the rate study and so forth, and is it possible that our citizens will be paying, instead of the $10 surcharge, be paying more a month, more than $10?
That's what I'm thinking.
Some may,
By usage, like
It'll be a
Geo,
consumption, it'll
it's
be.
gonna go by consumption.
And then the senior citizens, they already get a discounted rate. You gotta understand that, they get 10% discount? 10, it's the senior,
I know there's a discount, I agree.
they don't have the same rate as you and I.
They
So,
get 40% discount.
40%?
So,
Oh, 2 years. No, just kidding.
so we are, there's no guarantee that people, some folks won't be paying more. That is,
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, because it's gonna go on
that's why we
usage.
need to do this study, because we really don't want to end up shooting ourselves in the feet, because we're not really thinking this through. We don't want
The
to
rate
see
study's
this
gonna
plan.
help, it's gonna help people, a family of 8, yes, it's gonna go up, but a family of 3, we gotta be fair, and right now, the charges there, they're not justifiable, We can't answer people why they're getting charged this amount. And if we have a rate study, this is the charge. And this is a study that took place, and this is by usage, not by number of household. It's by usage of what you use. Because a family of 10 can use very minimum water. So their rate's gonna go down. Just because they're a big family, it's depending on the usage of the water. And a rate study, it's a rate study, and it's fair, it's justifiable, and that's it.
I think, one more last
Okay, we're still beating this dead horse.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think we're all in pretty much in agreement that we have to do something about the surcharge. There's no doubt about it. I feel real comfortable if we got something back from Snowden and we looked at it and understood exactly where we're going with this. And even, I mean, it's gonna be within a month, right?
The goal is to get to you. We're gonna make, well, I will work hard to get it, and I'll push it.
And we can at that point, make that decision to move, either way. But, I think we're all in agreement, but we need to do something about that disparity.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor, let me go ahead and make this motion that, I will make a motion to direct the city attorney and city manager to come up with an ordinance to eliminate ordinance 2016-1101, okay? And on the surcharge of $6.50 to be eliminated. The question that I have for Bobby on this motion is that can I distinguish citizens to commercial?
No,
Or has to be all the way across?
the rate study will identify that.
Sure, I'd rather not go into
No.
treating people
Okay.
differently.
That's my motion to take away the $6.50 surcharge from everybody. That's my motion.
Is that effective?
Effective May 1st.
Okay, second,
Second.
all in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Need to get that to us quick.
Well, really, it's only 3 months into the budget, yeah, so.
Okay, item D, discuss and consider naming the new city hall annex building or directing city manager to draft a resolution to that effect. Entertain a motion to discuss, please.
Motion to discuss. Second.
All in favor? Yes, sir.
Another item, I think, I was a little shocked with it. I had no idea there was these processes, and I missed that, so I'll let you guys discuss the decision for naming the annex building.
Oh, I put this item on the agenda because I wanted to see what the council thought of naming that building, if they had any ideas of who they wanted to name it after. That was it.
City hall annex.
I don't know if I dreamt it or if we discussed it, but, I thought we had, or maybe I heard somebody say something about it, but maybe naming it after, Fepix? No? Does anybody remember anyone?
I thought,
Yes, Councilman.
when Mr. Reyes presented, the last time he presented on this building, you were talking about making that the city hall.
Right, exactly.
City of Pearsall, the city hall.
Unless you guys want to have, I didn't know that there was.
And, I think, you know, that's where I thought that's where we stood last time when we discussed this, is the city of Pearsall, City Hall.
City hall.
And then what's this gonna be?
So this will be the annex.
This will be the annex.
This is what your annex.
Okay, so can we?
Is that one I have a drive-through? Is that one I have a drive-through as well?
Not yet, sir, I'm gonna work on that.
Okay.
No,
I'm just saying because, you know.
No, the finances and our guy, right-hand man's gonna be here.
Oh, okay.
Finance,
It's gonna be the business.
so this will be the business side of it.
Okay.
So Mayor, I understand what you're saying, that this is gonna be, the annex building has to be in the city hall. Okay, so, and I read the ordinance calls for submitting some names to the city manager to be brought to the city manager, to the city council for approval. So So I'll go ahead and follow that ordinance of, if you go ahead and submit some names for the city halls. I mean, the old city hall, which is in the annex building now. I'll follow the
Oh,
ordinance.
this one, this building.
Yes, I'll follow the ordinance on that, ma'am.
Okay,
You said-
so
you
no
said-
action taken?
And I'll make a motion to table this item.
Okay, second.
All in favor? All right, moving on to item E, discuss and consider extension of declaration of the public health emergency number 3 issued by myself on March 31st, 2020. Action item, entertain a motion to discuss, please.
Motion to
Second.
discuss.
All in favor?
Mayor and Council, if there's a way you'd like to discuss this item in executive
In
session.
executive session?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, under chapter,
5.1071.
Yes.
under chapter, Bobby?
Consultation with city council.
Consultation with.
071, Papa was 071.
You
Okay.
want to do it this one or with all the others?
We can add it to all the other ones.
Okay, with the other ones, when we get there?
Yes.
Can we stay here? Because most of us are.
Well, they would have to leave. Yes, which is
They would have to
fine,
leave.
because you just stop recording and you guys can go back. That way we are not so close together. So I need to entertain a motion to go into executive session,
If
please.
we're going to executive session on this one item,
There's still another
No,
one.
we're going into the, we're gonna take this item as well as the one that's already in executive session.
okay, were there just one other?
There's an item F,
There's
there's
an
item F as well.
There's
Just one?
Let's,
F, A, B.
Okay. If you just want to put both of them, whatever.
I think it's best to do both those items, E and F.
And A and B.
I have a question with,
If we could, because again, there's legal questions that may be posed with both of those items.
yeah.
Okay. So we entertain a motion to go into executive
Wait,
session.
Mayor, I have a comment. On F, I don't think this should be, and with all due respect, that this should not even be on that this should not even be discussed tonight. It was passed with a 5-2 vote, last council meeting, and we're violating Robert's Rules of Order by placing this back on the agenda. The mayor is not a voting factor on this, so she's not able to put this back on the agenda. The only ones that are able to put this item back on the agenda is the people that voted for it. Therefore, I think this needs to be struck off the agenda because it's in violation of Robert's Rules of Order. Am I correct, Bobby?
As well as the charter. So we'll discuss this in executive session.
But I don't think we should discuss it because it shouldn't even be on the agenda, because it's violating Robert's Rules of Order.
As it relates to whenever you have an agenda item that has previously been decided, the way it comes back on the agenda is by one of the people who voted
For it.
for it can bring it back on. The purpose is so that you resolve issues.
Yeah, because we had a meeting before that it said, we all made a promise, when something has been passed, that we do not bring it up again. And that was when we talked about decorum. We had said, when stuff like this comes on, yes, Julian did.
Only
Julian made
reason
a
I'm
comment.
bringing it back because we're still violating the charter, and I would explain.
But you're not able to put it back on the agenda. You're not able to, it's a violation of Robert's Rules of Order.
And that's, and if we have any, and that's this particular item, I was going to ask you, you know, if we're going to talk about the legality, I'd want to go back to closed session about it too. If we're going to discuss
Because
it.
we can even discuss it when it shouldn't even be on the agenda. Because the person that should put it back on is the people that voted for it.
Sure, but you would handle it during the course, the context of this meeting, as it would come up, and then there'd be a motion, and then you would handle the item accordingly. Now, you can handle it any one of several ways. You can move to table, move to dismiss, or move to discuss in closed session. So you still have your options. But to answer your question about Robert's Rules of Order, you are correct, is that if you vote on the winning side, you can always change your mind and come back and bring it back. If you vote on the losing side, you don't have that ability. And the way that, strangely, is Robert's Rules of Order conflicts with the way you put items on generally. Like, the way you have it in the charter, it says three council members,
Right.
city manager or mayor can put items on the agenda. But you still have to respect the process that you as a council have adopted that has said, basically, once we've decided something, if we're gonna follow Robert's Rules of Order,
Because
then,
we had that conversation,
Right.
Julian's the one that sat there and said, we have to respect people's decision and not be bringing things up if they don't pass.
because, well, right, once you've decided it really should remain decided unless someone changes their mind.
Yep, and I changed my mind.
But you're not
There's
voting,
still-
you're not a
We'll
voting,
select to-
you're not a voting factor
Okay,
on it.
So at this time, we're gonna go into executive session.
There,
Executive,
okay, we're gonna put E in executive session? And
Yes.
Then we're talking about F, right? Right, that's what we're talking
E,
about?
F, A, B, E, F. We're gonna do everything in executive session, so we're not
Oh,
in.
I'm sorry, it's 6A, 6B,
And above that, you have E and F.
5E and 5F.
5E and 5F?
Yes.
But Mayor, when do we vote to put it in executive session?
You can,
Because right
We
now,
haven't voted on it.
okay, because right now I'm gonna make a motion that on item F, we go
the
ahead and,
recommendation of the attorney was to discuss item D, now item E, in executive session.
Only item E, he said, he did not
Right,
say
item
that.
E. Right, that's
Yes.
right.
And then,
And I said if we're going back on E now, we should go back on 6A and 6B. If we just want to wait until we get to executive session, then we can just bring
Bring all of that
5E
But
into.
F is still an open, it's still here. We're not putting
Yes.
F in executive session, so we need to take care of
did you
F
recommend
here.
that? Did you not recommend that? I just heard you.
Again, when speaking to the city attorney, there's gonna be legal issues that were discussed, and again, I think that was.
As it relates to which item, Fred?
That's, F.
We're not in any.
I don't know legally if, again, whatever, if we can have, I
Are
really don't have a
we,
dog in
are
this.
we illegal to have Mr. Gondara as holdover as of right now?
Are you illegal?
Yeah,
No.
no, okay, so there's no legal thing that we have to discuss, and I don't think that needs to go into an executive session. And I don't think we need to talk about it, because we're violating Robert's Rules of Order. We're not violating the charter. The charter states you can stay in your seat, remaining there until, as a holdover, until someone is appointed, or if they're not appointed, you stay remaining on that seat. So
Right.
I don't think there's any legal
Okay.
legalities on this.
Right.
All of this is on the record. So we're going to item 6, A and B, into executive session, as well as item E, and then we'll discuss item F in open session. So entertain a motion to go into executive session, please.
Motion?
All in favor? 4, 5. Okay, we were reading to executive session, please. The time is 7:35.
Wait. I did not hear a second. Oh, yeah, that was. There was a second. I make the motion.
Oh,
Second.
Okay, all in favor?